Anyway, it's time to talk football, and there is a development as it relates to the Dallas Cowboys and quarterback Dak Prescott, subject to the franchise tag, 1 year, $31.4 million. The way things have been framed out, they were leaning toward that deadline of July 15 for striking a long-term deal. If they didn't, that's when things could have gotten very interesting because Dak Prescott has the right to hold out into training camp preseason without giving up a dime. He could have shown up a few days before the start of the regular season, gotten his entire $31.4 million. The only risk was the Cowboys at some point could have rescinded the franchise tender, made him a free agent. He wouldn't have been able to find another team at that point. And Stephen Jones, the team COO, told me several weeks ago that's not something they were going to do. Well, Dak Prescott wasn't willing to take that risk, Chris. He's signing it. He's accepting it. He's under contract at $31.4 million. Now the work continues on getting a deal done by July 15. Your thoughts on Dak making this move that he really didn't have to make right now?
No, didn't have to make. I can't say that I'm shocked that he did make it. You know, like you said, I think the big thing is, and a lot of people lose sight of this if you're not paying attention to the day-to-day details, is he can still negotiate a long-term deal here as long as it's for July 15th. You know, Mike, there's a few things I want to ask you. First off, I mean, it makes sense. Yes, you know, sign it right now as a football player. You're starting to get into some intense workouts. You're on the field more. A guy like Dak Prescott probably lifting weights, doing all those things a little bit more aggressively. So you sign the franchise tender. It does protect you if something were to happen to you. We saw a few injuries of football players last week and some of their workouts with other teammates and things like that. So I bet you that kind of like struck a chord with him and his camp to a degree. And then, you know, Mike, the other thing I want to ask you here, do you think the fact of the lack of a force majeure and we don't know how this year is going to play out, do you just get, you know, named a paper right now and get it going? And just in case there is no football, you have a contract signed and you still have wiggle room to say you expect money? Would that be part of their thinking?
Well, I think more specifically, at a time of great uncertainty, this is certainty.
Yeah.
This is $31.4 million that is fully guaranteed, period. And there's not anything they can do about it. Now, collectively, what the NFL can do, and the NFL would argue, I believe, based on things I've been told, that if there are no games at all this season, then the players aren't entitled to be paid because language in the standard contract implies that the game checks start when the games start. So if the games never start, the checks never start. Beyond that, there's no protection this year. The protection comes next year. And Chris, here's why this is important. Next year, if the salary cap would drop, the franchise tag numbers would drop under the base franchise tag. But for Dak Prescott, by rule, he's entitled to a 20% raise over what he makes this year. 31.4 becomes 37.68, regardless of what happens with the salary cap next year. So he's locked in for $69.08 million over the next 2 years, year to year. And look, next year's not guaranteed, but you know what? Last year, Chris, he played for $2 million with no guarantees, with a long-term contract the Cowboys offered him that he said, no thanks, I don't want it. I'm betting on myself with $2 million in hand. This year, he's betting on himself with $31.4 million in hand and the promise of 20% next year. And this gets back to what we talked about several weeks ago. At the end of the day, when July 15 rolls around, all that matters is what will the Cowboys offer him to get him to trade in the $69.08 million over the next 2 years, plus the craziness that happens in year three. $45 million under the transition tag, $54 million under the franchise tag, or you become Kirk Cousins and walk away. What will the Cowboys offer him to get him to do that? That's the question now. And now that he's signed the franchise tag, that is framed. I think there was a concern that when they got to July 15, and if the Cowboys got exasperated by him not taking that last best offer, they may say to him, hey, you know what? We didn't think we were going to rescind the tender, but if you don't take this, we are. That is completely off the table now once he accepts that franchise tag.
Well, you know, I saw that you wrote that on profootballtalk.com. I found that interesting. I mean, yeah, would they have taken that 31.4 million? And you wrote the example, I think specifically was what? Sign a Jadeveon Clowney, ride with Andy Dalton as your starting quarterback, and there was maybe another player you talked about as
Jamal
far as
Adams.
signing.
No,
Exactly,
I mean, this is
making
real.
a trade. Right.
You take away the 31-4 that otherwise goes to Dak. You get Clowney. You trade for Adams. You ride with Dalton, or maybe you have enough money left over. You can get Cam Newton. And as we get closer and closer to July 15, and those negotiations maybe get more contentious, and the Cowboys just finally say, "This guy's never going to accept what we're willing to pay him. That's it. We're done." That's gone now. And look, the chances of that happening were slim, but
Right.
now they're none because they can't take it away. They can't pivot to plan B with Andy Dalton and spend that money on others. And I think that, look, I think that was a factor in this. It's not going to be anything they can threaten or suggest. And remember, the GM is the owner, right? So you have a wild card with the Cowboys that you don't have anywhere else. The GM doesn't have to worry about getting in trouble with the owner. The GM can do whatever he wants because he is the owner. And I think that may knock some guys wobbly when it's time to negotiate. So you try to prevent that by making it clear going in, you're not going to have that nuclear option. The $31.4 million is essentially in my pocket.
Yeah, well, it's smart from that sense. It does make sense. And, the other thing that first popped into my brain, too, as far as Dak Prescott, his agent, where they are in this conversation, the camp. And, Mike, I know you wrote about this on ProFootballTalk.com as well. But, with Prescott, here he is, Dallas Cowboys quarterback, new head coach. There's certainly people that are, arguing on TV and even on social media. I know I have a lot of these comments on my Twitter reactions and things. Dak Prescott really worth this much money, all of these type of things. Okay, great. Doesn't really matter. But I do think the one thing is with Dak Prescott, a true professional. He understands how polarizing of a subject he is. It's a new head coach. And this is something I thought about. I mean, did we really think that Dak Prescott was not going to partake in training camp and have a holdout that way? And I think realistically, the answer is we didn't expect him to be that type of guy. And he's not that type of guy. So for him to be there too, he knows, okay, I'm going to training camp. I'm trying to win a Super Bowl. We got a team that's in a window. So he just signs it now and gets it over with. So there's no more second guessing or conversations that way either. And I think that was probably a big part of it as well.
I think you're absolutely right, Chris. He was not going to hold out in the training camp or the preseason. Le'Veon Bell 3 years ago with the Steelers did that, stayed away as long as he could. And he plays a position that is more conducive to plug and play, especially when you've got continuity of coaching staff and offensive coordinator. You know the offense. You stay away as long as you can, and then you show up and you're good to go, although it takes a while to get to the point where you're good to go. For Dak Prescott, you need the reps. You need the time. And he's looking at it as this is a contract year. Last year was a contract year at $2 million, and it worked out because this year I'm in position for another contract year at $31.4 million. And to get the $37.68 million next year, which is the 20% raise over this year, he's got to have a good enough season. And so that's look, I remember when Kirk Cousins got tagged by Washington. Both times, he instantly signed it. This is my chance to go out and prove it. For a quarterback that's so much more important than other positions where you don't have to be there every step of the way. So Dak will be there every step of the way. He'll position himself to have a great year. And then next year, if they can't work out a long-term deal, fine, pay me $37.68 million this year, knowing that next year you're going to have a hell of a mess on your hands and you may see me walk away.
Yeah, that's right. He kind of, ups the ante a little bit about next year and everything that goes along with it. And I think it is smart, as far as what he's doing there, makes sense. And, Mike, to your point, quarterback, running back, all right, so running back, pass rusher, wide receiver, you can get away with not being at training camp. Yeah, your biggest obstacle is going to be, okay, I need to get back and get into football shape. As a quarterback, and especially a young quarterback, and a lot of things you mentioned, Mike, about Dak Prescott. It's a big year. He wants to be able to puff out his chest at the end of this year and go, yeah, you paid me $31.4 million, but I played awesome. I played better than $31.4 million. So he's still going to be able to threaten them with a long-term deal, or nonetheless, like you said, be happy with the 20% raise. But the quarterback position, it's too hard to miss training camp and play the financial gamble game as compared to the other positions. There's too many nuances that have to be learned and talked about with receivers and tight ends. And different protection calls for offensive linemen, let alone it's a new head coach with a guy that's Mike McCarthy that's going to teach a guy like Dak Prescott, the ways of his offense and also a few tricks of the trade as far as what he teaches his quarterback or what he used to teach Aaron Rodgers to read on these certain plays. And those are little things and, intricacies and nuances of an offense that really take a quarterback from being good to great. And you'll miss that in training camp. And I think that's the other thing, too. Dak Prescott realizes that. I think he's a real professional. We both know that. And I think that's why you can't risk this at quarterback at that position especially.
And when you're a team leader, it's just a given that those are the things you're going to do, Chris. Remember the blowback Le'Veon Bell got when he did stay away, when he did not show up, and he was getting some friction? I mean, the men you're supposed to be leading in the locker room are going to turn. They're going to look for a leader somewhere else. And they're going to question you if you're not there. And then Andy Dalton is replacing that leadership vacuum. He's filling the void while you're gone. And it just creates issues and problems. And Dak Prescott understands that. Now, as to the contract itself that may or may not be negotiated by July 15, Chris, something you've been saying all along, and this is the absolute 100% truth. He wants a 4-year deal, period. And he is dug in on a 4-year deal. Because if you do a 4-year deal, they can still use the franchise tag on you to make it a 5-year deal or then a 6-year deal. He is dug in on that 4-year deal. He's not letting go. If they're going to get him to sign by July 15 and give up 31.4 this year, 37.68 next year, they're going to have to do a 4-year deal.
Yeah, well, I that's the thing that I'd always heard through the process, that 4th and 5th year deal were, the huge arguing points here. And, I understand it as a player. I do. Of course I do. I'm sensitive to that. You want to get back to the bargaining table as many times as you can in your career. It's a short career. Even if you play a long time in the history of the NFL, as far as what that's considered, it's still a short part of your life and a short part of your life to make money and support the rest of your life and family and things that go along with that. I just wonder, what's the Cowboys stance? Are we just talking pure salary cap numbers here? Or what is it that's kind of the impediment that's in the way? Is it guaranteed money? Those are the little things we don't really know. And I'm just interested to kind of hear what that last other issue is, or what's the last offer on the table, as far as what's been offered to Dak Prescott in his camp at this point.
Well, remember, when you have a July 15 deadline, the last offer is not going to get there until we get close to the deadline, because if you make your last offer well enough in advance, you're going to get squeezed off of it because it's driven by the deadline. I think the Cowboys are flabbergasted that they're dealing with a guy who was a 4th-round draft pick, never got big money from a football perspective. He's made some money off the field in endorsements, and, they want credit for that, but somebody pointed out to me yesterday, it's not like Chad Hutchinson and Quincy Carter ever got big endorsements just because they were the Cowboys quarterback. You still have to be a good player. And if you're a good player wherever you are, the endorsements have a chance of coming. And
a good person, too. Yeah.
Right. And you look at what Tony Romo did. Tony Romo was undrafted. Tony Romo wasn't supposed to be in the NFL. When the time came for him to work out a long-term deal, he took less. Because at a certain level, he's not even supposed to be there. Dak showed up and stepped in for Tony Romo. He saved them when Romo was done when Dak was a rookie in 2016. He started every game. He's been a model citizen, a great leader, a great quarterback. And he's not playing that game of, I'm just going to take less out of the goodness of my heart or because I can. Look, they took advantage of everything in the CBA that allowed them to force him to play out the full 4 years under his rookie deal. And they took advantage of the CBA by using the franchise tag and keeping him off the open market and using the exclusive tag so he couldn't even negotiate with another team that may be willing to give up 2 first-round picks, a difference of like 4 or 5 million more. So now he has rights. He has opportunities. He has leverage, and he has every right to use it. And I think what's driven them crazy is that he's willing to do it because a lot of players aren't.
Yeah, well, I'll say I didn't know if I thought Dak Prescott would be willing to do it. I don't. Just being around him, the things I've heard, I thought he was such a team guy. And I'm not saying he's not a team guy. It has nothing to do with, personally negotiating a deal.
Chris,
yeah. Right.
How many times do we have to show the picture of him giving you the side eye when you
I
asked
know.
him that? You don't need to
I know.
speculate. You tried to negotiate the deal on behalf of the Joneses, and he gave you a look, and that look was, this is a business. They treat it as a business. I'm treating it as a business.
No, and I totally get that, and I respect that, and I'm very sensitive to the fact that Dak Prescott, being a fourth-round pick, has not made any money, plays a pretty physical brand of football for the quarterback position. I mean, this is a guy, if you go back and look at his highlights from last year or other years, he's diving in the end zone, he's lowering his shoulder, running over linebackers to get in the end zone, do all those type of things. So I am very sensitive to that. I totally get that. I guess like I said, I would have pegged him as more of the I'll take less for the team. And, again, too, not that I want
to again.
Well, there it is. Oh, and look at that. I'm wearing the same shirt today. What a coincidence.
Time to
and look at that. This thing's still in good shape. That was 2 Super Bowls ago. But I do think there's a fine line, okay, at the quarterback position. And I'm not trying to say this to disrespect Dak Prescott or any other quarterback out there, of doing what is right for yourself. And I understand you take care of yourself first. And also trying to have the team in your mind to a degree. I know if you want to be an all-time great and things like that, you might have to sacrifice a little bit in dollars so you can sign a few extra players. That's all I'm saying. That's all. I just know if I was in his position, I would be thinking of those things. I know it's easier said than done, but I would, like I've always told you, I don't think it would be life-changing if I had $160 million in the bank instead of $175 million in the bank. I think I'd rather have maybe more playoff wins or better receivers or things like that too. And maybe you make that difference up in, post-career accolades and commercials or anything like that. I'm just throwing that out there. It's where my mind would have gone as a player myself.
Or you take the approach Peyton Manning took, and
I know.
His attitude was, it's my job to play quarterback and negotiate the best possible deal for me. It's your job to worry about the salary cap. And Chris, the one thing we can't forget, the world is different than it was when Peyton Manning was the quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts. The rookie wage scale that arrived in 2011 has dramatically changed what teams pay out, especially the first-round draft picks. So if you have a good scouting staff, and we've seen what the Cowboys have done in recent years, how well they've gone out and found young players who can come in and contribute even when they are mid to late round, like Dak Prescott, keep doing that. Because the more you do that, the less you need me to take less. And that's that. And you want to get others to take team-friendly deals? Fine, that's their prerogative. I'm not doing it. I play the most important position on the field. And I gave you 4 years at peanuts. And now it's time for me to get my steak.
Yeah, that's the big thing. It's the 4 years of peanuts that make it a different situation. And you're very right. The fact that he's a fourth rounder, there is the rookie wage scale, all of those things. It's a game changer here. And I think you're right, though. The more than anything, 4 years of peanuts makes him, for lack of a better phrase, a hair more desperate than we see in most quarterbacks in this situation. And I'm sure he feels like he's got some making up to do as far as dollars and cents are concerned. And I do get that. And I totally understand that and support Dak Prescott from that standpoint all the way.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.